inside the Porsche 718T Boxster. Now, truth be told, the 718 is a model line that Mark and I have covered extensively with videos on the GTS 4-liter and Spider. So with that said, much of this cabin is going to be a direct carryover from those other vehicles. However, this is also an interior space that Mark and I disagree on. He is not the biggest proponent of this car's cabin. He finds this older Porsche design language to be somewhat drab. He's a much bigger proponent of Porsche's more modern design language, tech-focused design language, found in the new 911, Macan, Panamera, and Cayenne. And I'm going to disagree with him on that. The thing that I like about the 718 is it's a gimmickless cabin that focuses on physical switchgear and simplicity over crazy geometry and interior gimmicks. Because of that, I think this is a space that's going to age very, very well. Physical switchgear does not age poorly. It's something that always is relevant and easy to use. And every control in this cabin is physical, whether that be your drive modes, your HVAC controls, or your infotainment control. There is a physical switch associated with that. And that is something I really, really appreciated. And when it comes to interior build quality and design choice, this car is solid. All the materials feel expensive and high quality, and at least today, with 2,000 or 3,000 miles on the clock, there are no rattles and squeaks. And the other nice thing about a Porsche cabin, or con, depending on how you look at it, everything is essentially a la carte. So if you want a leather wrapped dash with contrast stitching, you can do that. You want carbon fiber or aluminum in your interior, you can do that. You want different seats, you can change that about it. Or if you want a higher end audio system, you can also do that. The sky's the limit when it comes to a Porsche cabin. That's also obviously a negative because everything is expensive. But when it comes to the ergonomics and usability of this cabin, it's exactly what you're expecting in a 718. There's a surprising amount of interior room. The noise floor is very low despite being a convertible, which means on the highway with the top up, it's a surprisingly quiet cabin. Because this has a frunk and a trunk, it's also a very usable sports car that you could genuinely use as your daily driver. So with that said, let's put this up on the lift and head to the shop. So Mark, we're underneath the 718 Boxster T, and as I mentioned in the interior segment, T stands for touring.
It's certainly not testosterone, because from what my nose is picking up, there's no more than 4 cylinders on this, Jack.
Yes, this is the 2-liter, the base engine. So in typical T fashion, and the last time we saw this was in the 911 Carrera T, it's the belief that all the suspension goodies and enthusiast bits from the higher horsepower variants paired with the low output engine offers the most fun because you're actually able to access power on the street. So what we have here is a 718, which means this is on Porsche's MMB platform, which is their modular platform that the 911 is also on. However, this is mid-engined, not rear-engined, which means you also have an all-aluminum sports car, including front and rear subframes, all the suspension components other than the struts, which are steel-bodied struts. Because this is the T, you get the shifter out of the GT4, the manual shifter. You can also get this in PDK, however. You have the suspension tuning, or basically identical suspension tuning, off the GTS 4-liter, which means this has been lowered 20 millimeters when compared to the regular 718. You get a mechanical limited slip differential in the rear with Porsche torque vectoring. You have the Carrera wheels, which means they're wider specifically in the rear. You have a stickier tire. And you have a Porsche, which means it's God's car, Mark.
An interesting note before we go into any commentary, which we're going to do heavily during the drive. One of the magical parts about what Porsche has done is they're able to send the 911 and the 718 down the identical line, because despite it being mid versus rear engine, the body structure can be reformulated for both. So it makes the production process or manufacturing plant flow process easier, quicker, and more cost effective for them to churn these things out.
I also want to talk about the engine. This is a 4-cylinder. The regular Cayman and the Cayman or Boxster S.
But it is not an inline 4-cylinder.
No, it is a Boxster 4-cylinder, and this is the nicest 4-cylinder you could possibly buy. It has an integrated dry sump. It has a pretty impressive turbo as far as delivering power. 1900 to about 4500 RPM is peak torque output for this engine. It revs to 7500 RPM. There's variable valve timing on exhaust and intake, and it has a real cooling system. So despite being a 4-cylinder, it's more powerful and more fuel efficient, allegedly, than the prior generation base 6-cylinder. So theoretically, from an engineer's perspective, purely from a German engineer's perspective, the numerical output of this engine makes it a better engine than the 6-cylinder. I don't entirely agree with that, and I'm probably gonna get shot by Porsche for saying that. I do miss the sound of a flat 6, but this is technically a better engine from an engineer's perspective.
Okay, well, I will say one thing about this. If this car was below $50,000, we probably wouldn't be having a debate because we'd be praising it, or I'm sorry, I would. I know you're praising it already.
Again.
But all the things that they did to this is, it's everything that you could possibly want from a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It's the best possible outcome.
All I heard was Porsche was the best, Mark.
Okay, all right. It really, they did a lot to it, and it does translate to quite a bit of enjoyment driving it, but anything else before we hit the road?
Not really, Mark. Let's hit the road and take this for a drive on our favorite farm road. Mark, we're in a car that you and I disagree on.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
This is the 718T. It has a manual, and in this configuration, it's a Boxster. However, we have the top up, so our viewers can actually hear us talk, and I can hear you speak. Does that work for you?
Oh, I want to hear you tell me all about this car.
Through the cornfield, Mark. Back on the gas. Man, it's nice to drive a car with a good manual gearbox. Makes a huge difference, particularly after driving the Boxster Spider with a PDK. This is obviously nowhere as exciting to drive, being a 2-liter 4-cylinder, but at least out here, all of the good things about Caymans or Boxsters are still very, very present. It's a mid-engine sports car. It's easy to drive, fast, it trail brakes, it rotates under braking, it has phenomenal suspension tuning, and great steering. What do you think of the ride quality, Mark, from a livability perspective?
When you brought this car over, I fundamentally, through my DNA and my bones, I felt my soul getting ripped out of me when you told me you were bringing over a $70,000 718 with a 4-cylinder in it. And you pulled it up, you're like, dude, you gotta drive. I'm like, no, I'll pass, hard pass. And when I drove this car for the first time, and I did drive it very hard, I was instantly 100% engaged, and I was so connected with this car.
But do you think it sounds like that thing?
I'm not done.
All right, okay.
This car is amazing. The manual gearbox feels exactly, when I say why put a manual gearbox in a car if you're not going to do it right, this feels great. The engine power above like 2,500 RPM when you're going full tilt, when you're going flat out, you wouldn't know it's a 4-cylinder. It is so quick. The dynamics, the handling, the balance, the lightness.
It's a Porsche.
It is remarkable how great this car is. But somewhere deep down, when you tell me
Here
the
it
price
is.
tag, here we go. When I look at this car on the inside, To me, it screams enthusiast car from the fabric grab handles that you immediately associate with like could they not afford regular door handles?
Even when your nanny got into this?
Yeah, she's like, what is this cheap? And there's the two sides. It's an enthusiast product. It feels like an enthusiast product to me, except enthusiasts can't afford this. At this price point, enthusiasts can barely afford the $50,000 of the new Toyota Supra. And so it makes me confused. If I have the money, I'm getting a real 4-liter or I'm getting a 911. I wouldn't be getting a 4-cylinder version. So who is this for?
So there's two pieces to this, I think. One, the United States is unique in what we can afford and cannot. In certain markets, you get taxed up the ass for displacement laws and your carbon emissions and all that other fun stuff. The other side of it is if you listen to the engineers talk about this engine, and let me demonstrate kind of the pros and the cons of this engine.
Yeah, why don't you launch it where you're not revving it so you can just feel how dead this thing is?
I'll even start it in second gear. All right, so we're coming off. Spin the clutch. Actually, no, let me restart that. I will start from a complete dead.
Start from first. That's more fair. Nobody's starting in second.
We're at 1,000 RPM, slowly slipping the clutch. Full throttle.
Feels like a Honda Fit.
Yeah, a Honda Fit.
Kidding. From below 2,000 RPMs, no one's home. There's nothing happening.
If you're below 2,000 RPMs, like any 4-cylinder or most engines that aren't, big displacement, it's pretty much gutless. But as soon as you hit 1,900 to 2,000 RPM, all the way to 4,500 RPM, you make peak torque. And you compare this to something like
the closest engine I can compare this to, and I know it's not it's a different engine family, but the Type R.
Okay.
The Civic Type R is probably the best turbocharged 4-cylinder in some type of affordable price range. What they've done here is they made a conscious decision to tune for max RPM, max power, where it feels a little bit more naturally aspirated. Over 2,000 RPMs, as you rev it out, it is so satisfying. Below, it is just like somebody gave you a 3-cylinder. There's two polar opposites of feeling at that point. So if you know that you're winding this out, you're gonna love it. And the red line, what is it?
7,500 RPM.
That's really high for a turbocharged 4-popper.
Yeah, there are good things about this engine. While I agree with you, this does not have the soul of a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder like you get in the 4-liter or anything like that.
But it doesn't sound. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised at how good it sounds.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It actually only really down low and idle does it sound Subaru-y.
Yeah.
Once you get it going, this is better than any.
It has a really warm resonance. It's not like a rickety ass like clatter train like fake engine noise 4-popper.
No, it's totally pleasant. So let's get back to our debate though.
Okay.
This is $70,000 or $78,000 is tested. What else? Even removing the mid-engine part, what else from a engineering perspective that is an integrated dry sump, has all aluminum construction, adjustable dampers, won't break every 2 seconds, hold its value the way a Porsche does, exists, other than like a C8 Corvette?
A Miata with $2,500 worth of dampers and brakes.
This thing would annihilate a Miata. And this is all
annihilate
aluminum.
it in how? In driving excitement?
Round a track.
This is not a track car.
But nor is a Miata, to be fair.
But a Miata was built with motorsports in mind, Jack.
So was every
so
Porsche.
I'm not debating it. This is a far superior car to the Miata. And it damn well better be.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about for regular driving excitement. The Miata delivers a lot of what this car does for essentially 1/3 the price. And I know that's what people are going to ask. Is this deliver 2 or 3 times the driving excitement or driving connection that an ND2 Miata does, an ND2 Club?
No, but that's the same with any luxury good.
This is not a luxury good. You remove the Porsche badge and the pedigree from this, it does not feel like a luxury product. It feels like an enthusiast product. Stripped down, bare bones.
Back to that point then. So your clip speakers in your audio system in your home, couple grand, is a Bowers & Wilkins set of 801 diamonds or 800s, 10 times the value over your clips.
Yeah, it depends on your usage case. If you're going to put it in a huge garage space where all it does is echo, no, it doesn't bring you any value. But again, this is not a purebred track car.
But if you can afford $80,000, like it's no big deal, and you want a...
then you're going to buy a
Exactly.
GTS 4-liter, or you're going to buy a 911. Your argument about what region this was designed for and all the fuel economy and emissions laws, that doesn't apply to where we're at. In North America, if you have 80 grand, you're telling me you would choose this over a C8 or some equivalent.
I would choose this over C8 because I like driving this.
So would I.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be, I mean, it's true. It drives way better. I love this car. I do. I just hate that they can't have some type of attainable, reasonable
So if you fully
entry.
loaded this car, it's above 85, right? And if you can afford 85, you can probably afford 106. I know that's like a $20,000 delta, but based on socioeconomics, you could probably do that. Yes, you could get a GTS 4-liter or even a GT4, but if you are someone who wants the lightest, most nimble feeling, low power but most fun, accessible driving experience that they tried to go for in the T, you're going to buy this. But clearly, this is a very expensive car, and you have to love what they're doing with this thing to shell out that kind of cash.
Yeah, you're gonna have to love it a lot. I don't have any issue with it.
That's a great car.
My issue is what they're delivering here, aside from the driving experience, doesn't match up with the price tag. It drives every bit of like $65,000, $70,000 until you get into this, some of the outside, to me, most people are going to enjoy like the new Z probably just as much, or the Supra for $20,000 less.
Even though those, from an engineering perspective, are far inferior products.
I mean, from a driver's car enthusiast perspective, they are not as good. That's for sure. I guess this is like the endless debate, the endless debate that we're gonna have. But what's your kind of conclusions driving this? Would you really recommend this over like the 4-liter or some of the other Porsche products? And who is it for?
This is the tough part. If it is a stretch purchase and you want a Porsche more than anything else in the world, and all you can afford is 80 grand, buy this car. You will be really, really happy. If you have more money than that, and the jump between 80 to 100,000 is no big deal, and the local laws and all that other fun stuff, and you can get an allocation for a GT4 Spider or GTS 4-liter, get one of those cars. So with that, Mark, I think it's time for us to head into the final thoughts.
You're going to handle the final thoughts.
Final thoughts on the Porsche 718T. I've said this in the past about other Porsche products. If you're someone who values engineering, is not particularly cost conscious, loves the fact that you have to push their products to get the rewards, is a car that is enjoyable at the limit, and is a car that you want to drive hard every single day, you're absolutely going to love this thing. Not to mention the fact that unless you're Nick Murray, Porsches are reliable and they have excellent resale values. As a general rule, what's not to love? And if you're someone like Mark, who's going to moan about the price of this car, I understand. It is an expensive product. But I challenged Mark off camera, and he agrees with me. You cannot find a better driving car for less money. Not a car that is as capable as this, that has the dynamic refinement of this, and is this enjoyable to drive. While there are cars cheaper than it, like the ND2 Miata, the upcoming 86, that offer a lot of the same enjoyment, it is not to the same level, and that's just the reality of a car like that. And to me, it's more of a indictment of the industry as a whole than this particular vehicle. Sadly, many of the greatest cars to drive these days are very, very expensive and outside of the reach of most enthusiasts, but it's not really Porsche's fault. So with that said, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.